All right, so first and foremost, I am using www.realtimeboard.com for this whiteboard. I am also using it's a kind of like a slate. It's called a Real Bamboo, or it's called Bamboo. I'm sorry. Um, it's got a stylus and it's just a little USB streaming. You just plug it in with your USB, and it allows you to write. So that's the components I've been using. I've been having a couple people ask me how to do this. I'm on a Mac, so I'm using QuickTime to record my screen. I could also use, if I was on Chromebook, I'd use Screencastify. If I was on a PC, I'd probably use Screencastify as well. I've been really enjoying that. But so, anyways, quick story here. My wife and I went to a baseball game with a couple of our friends, and on the car ride up to Oakland, is a 4-hour drive. The wife was telling us how they didn't like Common Core, being in education for my 10th year now, and also coming from a family of educators. This intrigued me, so I asked why, because I love Common Core. I think it's a very good system if you understand it properly. And she explained to me how it's confusing and how the new processes just didn't make sense on the homework. And I asked her to take a picture for me, and so this is what she sent me. It has the old-fashioned way procedure, where it's just stacking it and subtracting. And as a Common Core person, I have no problem with that. But then we look down here, the new way. Now, what this appears to be to me, is a strategy. It's a strategy to do mental math. This is something I would do in a number talks class. So they're starting with the 12, and they're making it to a familiar number. So they say, oh, well, 12 plus 3 is 15. And I know 15 plus 5 is 20. And 20 plus 10 is 30. Then 30 plus 2 equals 32. So I can add up all of these to get 20. Instead of just, hey, stack it up and get 20. I fully understand why somebody would be frustrated with this, because this is not how I would teach it. The big confusion we have with Common Core is that it's still very new, and most of the teachers, have a difficult time with it, because they have only taught, they've taught several ways depending on how long they're in the classroom, but it's a very procedural way they teach. The thing that was there, let me do a different problem. Let's say we've got something like, let's make it 32, and let's go ahead and subtract from 32, 18. Now, in the real world, there's no problem with stacking this up, but this is what you call a procedure. You're crunching numbers here. You don't really understand what's going on. And Common Core is trying to build number sense. And so the thing that we saw on the other page was not exactly how I'd teach this. What I would do is I'd use some sort of representation. In kindergarten, they might use something like it's 32, 32, let's make them circles. And they draw all 32 out, and then circle the 18 they took away, just like I remember when I was in grade school. That's very Common Core. But as you get up in the grades, what they do is, the big thing is, you have these ways to represent numbers like such. This is called a tape diagram. And there's a couple different ways you could do this. So I would say that this value, and you can label it pretty much any way you want to, as long as you say that this is a 32. So if I wanted to, I could actually write the 32 within this tape, or I could just use a bracket and say, hey, this is a distance of 32. Now, I know that 32, so this is where you start building this number sense. Is 32 a lot bigger than 18 or a little bit bigger than 18? And depending on your grade, they might think that 18 will only go to here. Some might say, hey, it's about half, somebody might know it's less than half. If you're in first grade and they think it's more than half, that's not a big deal. But the teacher should say, the teacher should be able to, especially when instructing, use what we call like a relative size. So if that's 32, 18 is going to be right about here. So this distance is 18. Now, there are 1,000,001 ways strategies to solve this problem. And I'm going to show you my favorite. Because the thing is, with Common Core, this whole strategy thing is more for number reasoning. It's not necessarily for how do you do it on pencil and paper. I'm not going to draw all this out for every problem. That'd be ridiculous. This is mapping out what I do in my mind. Think about this like if I were to go to a restaurant and I'm going to give a 15% tip. I'm not going to get out my calculator and multiply it by 0.15. I'm going to look at the tax. If the tax is around 7.5%, I'm going to double the tax. If if you're more like me, I move the decimal once, that gives me 10%. I half that, then I add it together. That's because I'm weird, but some people might not like that. But you're going to find that in a functional way. And if you verbalized it or you try to explain to people how you do that, it may not make sense. You might say, okay, I cut it and I divide it by 4, that gives me 25%. Then I move the decimal, that gives me 10%. I subtract, that'll give me 15%. You might not like that way. The whole thing about Common Core is there's more than one way to think of an answer. It's to get away from procedure. It's to get into reasoning. So let me show you my favorite way. And hopefully so this will shed the light on it. And just know that some teachers are not here yet. Some teachers are learning this. So I know that this is the distance right here that I'm asking. It's a subtraction problem. So I want to know the difference. What is the difference between these two lengths? So something I discovered with my students is if I said, okay, this 18, I don't like this 18. Because I know I'm going to have to borrow. So if I go ahead and shift this over 2, if I shift this over by 2, and I shift this over by 2, does my distance change? Does my difference change? If I say, okay, I'm going to add 2 here, and I'm going to add 2 here, did my difference change? And the answer is no. And most kids are going to get this. You know, if you have a 18-point lead in basketball and you score 2 points and they score 2 points, the lead doesn't change. If you're 10 feet away from somebody and you go 2 feet up and they go 2 feet up, the distance doesn't change. But what this does is this now gives us prettier numbers. So now instead of it being 32 subtract 18, this now becomes from here to here a 20. And now from here to here becomes 34, because 32 plus 2 is easy and 18 plus 2 is easy. Now instead of thinking of 32 minus 18, I could think of this as 34 minus 20, which is now going to give me 14. Does it work? Well, let's try. I'd have to regroup here. That's a 12. That's a 4. That's a 2. Oh, look at that. It worked. So now here's where the thing goes. Here's the thing about Common Core. This is what many teachers are missing. This is just one way to do it. Okay, it's not the right way. Some students might do what that example said. Well, okay, I'm going to go to 18. I know if I add to the 18, that's going to give me 20. Now, if I'm at 20, I'm going to add 10, and that's going to give me 30. Now, once I'm at 30, I'm going to add 2, and that gives me 32. Well, how much should I have to add from the 18 to get to the 32? Well, I added 2, 12, 14. And if you see this done as this narrative, as I'm reading it to you, as I'm explaining it to you, I'm sure you're having this, oh, I get it moment. I see how that works. because it's more intuitive right now. And maybe you actually think that way. Maybe you don't. But I guarantee you that if you're going to do 32 minus 18 in your mind, most of us do not stack up 32 and 18 and subtract and regroup and borrow. Most of us don't do that. Personally, I add up. If I'm actually going to be honest, if I say 18 to 32, I know, okay, 18 plus what's going to get me under 32? 18 plus 10. 18 plus 10 is 28. Add 4, I get the 32. It's 14. Okay? That's another way we could do it. So what we're trying to do with Common Core is not throw away the procedure. Is trying to get the reason why, get the understanding of the numbers, have students see these relationships, and then make this 32 minus 18 something that they don't need to write down all the time. And that reason why when you get to place value, you get a problem like 32 and 1/10 minus 18 and 16 thousandths. You don't have a student saying, oh, well, the answer is 462 or whatever, because they have a place value issue. They actually understand 32 minus 18 should be around 14. So think of this more as estimation. This is tools to help students estimate. It's mental math skills. It's number sense. But that doesn't. I fully disagree with sending a bunch of questions home with the students and having them write these methods down. When I taught with my math class, I would have them do it in their head, and they'd use one of these methods, because all this is drawing out your method. It's actually more work. Even for me to do it, it's more work. It's tedious. All it does is prove to the people, what their thought process was. You might not believe me if I say add 2 to both sides and it's going to keep the answer same. I'll tell you, if you subtract 8 from both sides, it's still going to be the same. Because I subtract 8, that's 24. I subtract 8, that's 10. 24 minus 10 is still 14. And these tricks will work. And I shouldn't say tricks. These reasoning will work for any operation. And if we get our students to understand how numbers work with their operations, and not just a procedural, I just have it memorized way, they're going to understand how numbers relate. They're going to actually understand the math. And that's the end goal. So if it were me, for that assignment, I'd have the students write down their estimate, and you just trust them on that. And then they could do the procedure. You don't go away from the procedure necessarily. It's still okay for students to do it this way. This part over here should be done in class with a teacher facilitator, where students are able to explain their method. They're able to write down what they answered, and then be able to say, I agree, I disagree, and they have to have that teacher there to justify. This is a thing called a number talk. And I'll go ahead and add this, if I can find my stylus. I'll add this as the last thing. So I'm going to do a miniature number talk here. I'm going to fake it. Let's say I've got, and I'm going to do a multiplication problem just for the fun of it. If I've got 18 times, let's go 21. And I have a number talk. And I'll say, okay, class, what do you guys think about it? And right now they're doing it in their heads. They're using their methods. Okay? So they're using their methods, and then you have little Johnny say, and I just made this up, by the way, so don't think that I've pre-planned this. I have little Johnny say, okay, I think it's 360. Little Susie says it's 378. Somebody else says they think it's 38. Somebody else think it's, I'm trying to come up with, maybe somebody thinks it's 39. Hopefully at this point they're not going to get that bad of answers. Now, during number talks, you'd write their name. So you'd say Johnny. Or actually what I did, because confidentiality things, because these should be on chart paper, they stay in the room. So I might put their initials, that way they know who they are, but if some other person walks in, they're not seeing exactly who got what wrong answer. Now you select somebody. You say, okay, Johnny, how did you get your answer? And they said, well, okay, I know that I have 18. I know 18 is, and I thought of, let's say, area model. I know that 18 times 10, if I have 18 tens, that's going to give me 180. Well, I know that 21's close to that, so there's two 180s. And I know that 180 plus 180 is 360. And so that's the answer. And then maybe this Susie G She says, well, what I did was I thought of, well, okay, I thought of it as 20 times 18, and I thought of it as 18 times 1, and I know that the 20 times 18 is going to give me 2 times 18 is 36, so that's 360, plus an 18, which equals 378. And that's actually more No Child Left Behind procedural, but that might be a method they use. And then I'd say, okay, Johnny, do you think you're right or is Susie right? And he says, no, I think that Susie's right because I forgot about the ones place. And these people say, oh, I just added. And in fact, I added wrong. And I added and got it right, but hey, I missed this multiplication sign. So you have students the entire time justifying their answers, talking about math, talking about their number sense, and this teacher is basically just validating what they do and they don't do. That is Common Core. You do not send it home on a worksheet. If you get a worksheet, it's not Common Core. That's just the way it is. Homework with Common Core should look much different. I'd much rather see them actually just answering questions in any way that makes sense to them. It should not be a thing of confusion. It should be a thing where they're actually getting skills and they're actually understanding and getting sense. They should be watching maybe real life videos or asking their parents what real life situations do they do subtraction in, and coming back to school with those ideas so now they could use those in application in class. So that's my way too long video. Hopefully it helps somebody. All right, thank you guys. Bye.